The child had not spoken in 41 days. Not to the grief counselor who came every Tuesday with her soft voice and her laminated feelings chart. Not to the teachers at Westbrook Academy who left encouraging notes on her desk like small paper offerings. Not to her grandmother who had flown in from Atlanta and stayed for 3 weeks and cried quietly in the kitchen every night after the girl had gone to bed. 41 days of near silence, and Marcus Holt had spent most of them standing in doorways, watching his daughter from a distance, not knowing how to cross the space between them. He was not a man accustomed to not knowing things. At 44, he had built Holt Dynamics from a 2-room office in Charlotte into one of the most successful logistics software companies in the Southeast. He understood systems. He understood leverage and timing, and how to move resources from one place to another efficiently. He did not understand how to reach a 9-year-old girl who had watched her mother collapse in a grocery store parking lot and had not really come back from it. Ava had been the one who knew how to talk to Zoe. Ava, with her laugh that filled up whatever room she was in. Ava, who had died of a brain aneurysm on a Wednesday afternoon while Zoe was sitting in the back seat of the car eating a fruit cup. The paramedics said it was fast. Marcus had been in a board meeting. By the time he got to the hospital, there was nothing left to do but stand there and learn what it felt like when the center of something simply disappeared. That was 6 weeks ago. Now the house on Whitmore Drive felt like a museum of the person who used to live there, Ava's reading glasses still on the nightstand. Her handwriting on the grocery list still magnetized to the refrigerator. A half-finished scarf she had been knitting for Zoe still on the arm of the chair by the window. Marcus had not moved any of it. He had, however, gone through 4 household assistants in as many weeks. The first had been efficient and cheerless, and Zoe refused to come downstairs when she was there. The second had tried too hard, bringing Zoe stuffed animals and using a high, bright voice that made the child flinch. The third had lasted only a few days before admitting, with some dignity, that she was not equipped for a household in grief. The fourth had quit after Zoe locked herself in the bathroom for 2 hours and would not come out until Marcus sat on the floor outside the door and read to her through the gap at the bottom. He had read her 4 chapters of Charlotte's Web that way. He had not known. He still remembered it well enough to recite it. Some things stay in you from childhood without your knowing. The agency sent a 5th name on a Thursday morning. Nadine Carroll. 38 years old. References from 3 families in the Raleigh-Durham area. A note in her file that said simply, experienced with children in transition. Marcus read the file twice, then set it down and called his estate manager, a precise woman named Gloria who had been running the logistics of his personal life for 6 years and who did not believe in wasting words. I want to meet her before she starts, he said. That's standard, Gloria said. I want to meet her without her knowing who I am. There was a pause. Marcus. I just want to see how she is, before she's performing. Another pause, longer this time. I'll tell her you're the property manager, Gloria said finally, in the tone of a person who has decided to pick her battles. He wore a gray polo shirt and dark work pants he had bought the previous afternoon at a hardware store. He drove his own car, not the black SUV, but the older Jeep he kept in the second garage and mostly used on weekends. He arrived at the house 20 minutes before Nadine Carroll was expected, and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a clipboard of papers that were not actually about anything. She knocked at the back door at exactly 9 o'clock. She was not what he expected, though he could not have said exactly what he had expected. She was tall, with close-cropped natural hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She wore a navy cardigan over a simple dress and carried a canvas tote that had what appeared to be a library book sticking out of the top. She looked, he thought, like someone's favorite teacher. Or like the kind of person who knew exactly where she was going. Nadine Carroll, she said, and extended her hand. I was told to ask for the property manager. That's me, Marcus said. He shook her hand. It was a firm, unself-conscious handshake. Come in. Coffee? Please, she said, and sat down at the kitchen table without being invited to, which he found he did not mind. He poured her a cup and sat across from her and asked her the questions Gloria had written out for him, the standard household questions about her schedule and her experience with children and her familiarity with large properties. She answered them clearly and without embellishment. She had worked with 3 families over the past 8 years. 2 of the children she had cared for had lost a parent. 1 had been through a difficult divorce. She did not describe what she had done in those situations. She said only that she believed children needed consistency more than they needed cheerfulness, and that grief in a child looked different from grief in an adult and required different things. "What kind of things?" Marcus asked. He set down the clipboard. She looked at him. She had a direct way of looking at people, but she was actually paying attention and not just waiting for her turn to speak. "Routine," she said, "and someone who isn't afraid of the quiet." He asked her if she had questions about the position. She asked about Zoe's school schedule, her dietary preferences, whether she had any medical needs he should know about. She asked what Zoe's favorite book was. He said he wasn't sure. She did not react to that in any visible way, but he felt it land somewhere. He showed her around the house. She moved through it quietly, taking things in. She paused for a moment at the doorway of the living room, where Ava's knitting was still on the chair. She said nothing about it. She noticed the framed photographs on the hallway wall. Zoe at various ages, Ava and Marcus at their wedding, a family photo at a beach somewhere. And she looked at them the way you look at something that tells you what you need to know. When they came back to the kitchen, she asked when she could meet Zoe. "She's at school until 3, he said. "Then I'll be here at 2:30, she said. "So I'm not arriving at the same time she is. It's better if I'm already part of the house when she comes in." He looked at her for a moment. "All right," he said. She came back at 2:30 as she said she would. Marcus had changed back into his regular clothes by then and was working from his home office when he heard Gloria's voice in the kitchen below, and then Nadine's, low and steady. He told himself he was going to keep working. He did not keep working. He found a reason to be in the hallway near the top of the stairs when Zoe's car pulled up. He watched through the window as his daughter got out of the back seat and walked up the front path with her backpack on, looking at the ground the way she had been doing for 6 weeks. Like the world had become something she wasn't sure she trusted anymore. Zoe came in through the front door, dropped her backpack on the floor in the entryway, something Ava had told her 100 times not to do, and stood there for a moment. Then she looked up, because there was someone in the kitchen doorway she didn't recognize. Nadine didn't move toward her. She didn't smile too widely or crouch down to Zoe's level or say anything cheerful. She said, "Hi, I'm Nadine. I'm going to be helping out around the house for a while." Zoe looked at her. "There's a snack on the table if you want it," Nadine said. "You don't have to." She stepped back into the kitchen and gave Zoe the space to decide. Marcus, at the top of the stairs, stayed very still. Zoe picked up her backpack. She never picked it up right away, and walked into the kitchen. He didn't know what was said after that. He went back to his office and closed the door and sat at his desk for a while without doing any work. Outside, the late afternoon light was coming in sideways through the trees. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than it had been all week. He couldn't explain exactly how he knew that. He just knew. He extended her schedule to 5 days a week after the first 2 weeks. By that point, Zoe had started talking again. Not a lot, and not about everything, but in the ordinary way children talk. About things that happened at school, about a show she was watching, about a stray cat she had noticed in the backyard. She started eating dinner at the table again instead of in her room. She started leaving the door to her bedroom open. Marcus watched all of this happen and felt something loosen in his chest that had been knotted there since the hospital. He also started finding reasons to be in whatever room Nadine was in. He told himself it was because he wanted to observe, to make sure things were going well. This was partially true. But he was also, without quite intending to, listening to her. The way she talked to Zoe, unhurried, not making too much of things. The way she answered Zoe's questions straight, even when they were hard questions. One afternoon, he came down to the kitchen to find Zoe asking in her careful 9-year-old voice whether dead people could see you. He froze at the bottom of the stairs. Nadine was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I don't know for certain, but I think the people who loved you when they were alive, That love doesn't just go away. I think it stays with you somehow. Zoe thought about this. Like how? Like how you still know what your mom's laugh sounded like, Nadine said. You still carry that. That came from her. There was a silence, and then Zoe said very quietly, she had a loud laugh. Tell me about it, Nadine said. And Zoe did. She sat at that kitchen table for 20 minutes and talked about her mother's laugh. The specific way it would get louder when something really surprised her. How she could hear it from 2 rooms away. How it sounded in the car when the radio played a song she liked. She talked, and Nadine listened. And Marcus stood at the bottom of the stairs without moving and pressed the back of his hand against his mouth and did not make a sound. He went back upstairs after a while. He sat on the edge of the bed, his side, always his side, and looked at the reading glasses on the nightstand, and thought about what it meant that his daughter had just done the thing he had not been able to do once in 6 weeks. He had not been able to talk about Ava, not to his mother, not to his business partner, not to the therapist he had seen twice and then stopped calling. Every time he tried, it was like reaching for something in a dark room and not finding it. He picked up Ava's glasses, set them down, picked them up again. He didn't know what he was doing. The first time he had a real conversation with Nadine, it was an accident. It was a Thursday evening, later than she usually stayed. Zoe had had a hard afternoon. A classmate had said something thoughtless about kids without moms, and Nadine had stayed to help her through it. The two of them ending up on the back porch with cups of hot chocolate, watching the yard go dark. Marcus had come downstairs to say goodnight to Zoe and found her already asleep on the couch, a throw blanket pulled up to her chin. Nadine was in the kitchen washing out the mugs. You didn't have to stay, he said. I know, she said. He stood in the doorway for a moment. Rough afternoon. She handled it well, Nadine said. Better than most adults would have. What did she say? When she was talking to you on the porch? Nadine turned off the faucet and dried her hands on a dish towel. She considered him for a moment, not in a cold way, but in the way of someone deciding how honest to be. She said she was scared you were sad all the time, Nadine said. She said she didn't want to talk about her mom in front of you because she thought it would make things worse for you. Something moved through him that he didn't have a name for. She's 9, he said. I know, Nadine said. That's the age where they start trying to carry things that aren't theirs to carry. He sat down at the kitchen table without quite meaning to. She sat across from him after a moment, the way she had the first morning, without being invited, without it feeling like an intrusion. I don't know how you do it, he said. What you do? You mean with Zoe? With all of it? Being around this much grief and not... He stopped. He wasn't sure what he was trying to say. Not what? I don't know. Not being undone by it. Nadine was quiet for a moment. I don't always not get undone by it, she said. I just don't think the goal is to be unaffected. I think you just have to be willing to sit in it with someone. He looked at her across the table. The kitchen was quiet. The light above the sink was the only one on, and it gave the room a particular quality, that late-night kitchen feeling of being slightly outside of ordinary time. I didn't know she was worried about me, he said. She loves you, Nadine said simply. She's watching you. He nodded slowly. He pressed his thumbnail against the edge of the table, a thing he did when he was trying not to feel something. I was in a meeting, he said, when it happened. When Ava... I was in a room talking about quarterly projections and she was in a parking lot and I didn't know. He stopped. I keep thinking about that. I don't know why I keep thinking about that specifically. Because it's the thing your mind goes to when it's trying to find a place to put the impossibility of it, Nadine said quietly. That's not a character flaw. That's just how loss works. He looked at her. She looked back. Neither of them said anything for a moment, and it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of silence that happens when something real has been said, and there's no need to cover it over. He exhaled. It was not dramatic. It was just the small sound of something releasing slightly. "I should let you go," he said. "It's late." "It is," she agreed and stood up and got her bag from the hook by the door. He walked her out to her car because it was late and because the neighborhood was quiet, but it was late. And because the neighborhood was quiet, but it was still late. She didn't say anything about him doing that. At the car, she opened the door and then paused. "For what it's worth," she said. "Zoe says you read to her through the door that first month. 4 chapters." She looked at him. That was the right thing to do, even if it didn't feel like enough. She got in her car and drove away, and Marcus stood in the driveway for a while after the taillights had gone, looking at the dark street, thinking that he could not remember the last time someone had said something to him that made him feel, even slightly, less alone in his own life. It came out on a Monday, not dramatically, not in a confrontation. It came out because Marcus was on a video call with his CFO in the kitchen, forgot to check who was in the house, and the CFO said his name, his full name and title, at exactly the moment Nadine came in from the back door with Zoe. He saw her face when she heard it. The slight stillness, the way her eyes moved to him, and then moved away. He ended the call as quickly as he could. She was putting Zoe's things on the hook by the door, her movements even and unhurried, the way they always were. Zoe went upstairs to change. The room settled into quiet. He said, "Nadine." She turned around. "I should have told you," he said, "when we first met. I was the one you were interviewing with, not the property manager." She looked at him for a long moment. "I know," she said. He stared at her. "You know, I figured it out fairly quickly," she said. "The way Gloria deferred to you on the phone when she thought I couldn't hear. The way the house is arranged around you, the photographs. And you didn't say anything." "It wasn't my business to say anything," she said. "You were deciding whether you could trust me. That seemed reasonable under the circumstances." He didn't know what to do with that. "You're not angry," he said. It was not quite a question. "I understand why you did it," she said. "You have a child to protect." He sat down at the kitchen table. He had been standing up this whole time without realizing it. Most people would be angry. "I'm not most people," she said, without any particular pride in it, just as a fact. He looked at her. She was standing by the kitchen counter with her arms loosely crossed, and she looked the same as she always did, steady, direct, present. And he thought, with a clarity that surprised him, that he had spent the past 2 months watching someone be exactly who they were, without any adjustment for audience. He had not met very many people like that. He had been married to one. The thought came and went without crushing him, which itself was something new. "I owe you an apology," he said. "You owe me honesty going forward," she said. "That's all." He nodded. She put the kettle on, because that was what she did when the day needed resetting, and he stayed at the table, and Zoe came back downstairs in her after-school clothes and sat next to him and started telling him about something that had happened in art class, and the three of them moved into the ordinary rhythm of the late afternoon, and it felt, Marcus thought, almost exactly like a life. He asked her in November if she wanted to walk with him and Zoe in the park on Saturday. He said it casually, in front of Zoe, which he did intentionally because it made it less weighted, less of a thing. Nadine said yes without hesitation, which he had not allowed himself to predict. They walked for 2 hours. Zoe ran ahead and came back, ran ahead and came back, the way children do. She found a particularly good stick. She tried to convince them that a cloud looked like a dragon and made her case at length. She held Nadine's hand going over the small bridge near the pond and held Marcus's hand on the way back. At one point, while Zoe was investigating something at the edge of the water, Nadine said, without looking at him, "She's doing so much better." "She is," he said. "You both are," she said. He looked at her. She was watching Zoe at the water's edge, her expression easy, open. There was nothing in her face that required anything from him. "I want to tell you something," he said. She waited. I know what this looks like," he said, "and I know that you work for me, And I know that creates I know how this could seem. She turned and looked at him then. She let him be clumsy about it. She did not help him or hurry him. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I just want to say that spending time with you has been... He stopped. Started again. I hadn't looked forward to a day in a very long time, and then I started looking forward to days. She was quiet for a moment. I know, she said. I look forward to them too. It was not a declaration. It was not a romantic speech. It was just two people standing by a pond on a cold November afternoon, saying a true thing to each other. Zoe came back with her stick and announced that she had named it Gerald, and that Gerald was coming home with them, and the conversation closed around that and moved on. And Marcus walked back to the car with his daughter on one side and Nadine on the other, and did not try to make it more than what it was, because what it was already felt like more than he deserved. The conversation he didn't expect happened in December, 3 weeks before Christmas. He came home early from a trip to find Nadine in the living room with Zoe, the two of them sitting on the floor with a large piece of paper spread between them. Zoe was drawing, and Nadine was adding things around the edges of whatever Zoe was making. They were talking quietly, steadily, in the way people talk when they're comfortable with each other's company. He stood in the hallway. He did not make his presence known right away. He heard Zoe say, "Do you think she can see this?" Nadine said, "Who? Mom." A pause. "I think," Nadine said, and her voice was careful and kind, "that if love doesn't go away when someone dies, and I believe it doesn't, then some part of your mom is still connected to you. Maybe she can't see the way we can see, but I think she knows you. I think she knows how brave you're being." Zoe was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm drawing it for her. In case." "That's a beautiful thing to do," Nadine said. "Will you help me write something on it?" "I don't know all the words I want." "Yes," Nadine said. "Tell me what you want to say and I'll help you find the words." Marcus put his hand on the wall in the hallway. He breathed. He thought about a man who had not known how to cross the space between himself and his daughter. He thought about 41 days of silence that had not been the end of something, only the middle. He thought about the fact that it was not weakness that had gotten them here. It was patience and willingness, and one person who showed up every day and was exactly who she was, and asked for nothing in return except honesty going forward. He waited until Zoe went to bed that night to find Nadine in the kitchen with her coat on, about to leave. "She told me what she drew," he said. "For Ava." Nadine nodded. "Thank you," he said, "for helping her with that." She knew what she wanted to say, Nadine said. She just needed someone to hold the pen with her. He stood in the kitchen with the overhead light on and the December cold coming through the old frame of the window, and he looked at this woman who had walked into his house 6 months ago and quietly, without spectacle, helped his daughter find her way back to the surface. "I would like," he said slowly, "for this to be something other than what it has been." She looked at him. "I don't know exactly how to do that," he said. "I know there are things to figure out. I know this is complicated, but I know that I want to try, if you do." She set her bag down on the counter. "I think," she said, "that you already know how to do it. You've been doing it." He looked at her for a long moment. "Is that a yes?" he said. She smiled then. Not a performative smile, but the real one he had seen only a few times. The one that changed her whole face. "That's a yes," she said. Outside, the December night was clear and cold, and through the kitchen window the stars were visible between the bare branches of the oak tree in the backyard, the same tree Zoe had named 3 separate things at 3 separate ages, the same tree Ava had planted the first year they lived there, from a sapling she carried home in a paper bag. It was a large tree now. It had been there through everything. Zoe slept upstairs, her drawing folded carefully on her nightstand, addressed to someone she still loved and still carried and would always carry. The way you carry the people who made you who you are. And in the kitchen, 2 people stood in the quiet and let the night be what it was. Not an ending, and not quite a beginning, but the particular moment when something that has been growing slowly in the dark finally reaches the surface and turns toward the light.